Yeah, well, the thing that is actually quite good about French high school is that it is quite broad until your very last year. Whereas like in the UK, you choose 3 A levels and then you do that for like your last 2 years. In France, you have like core subjects that are basically compulsory. Everyone has to do them. So like philosophy was compulsory for everyone. Then you had like a bit of science and then different things like sport. And then you had to choose 2 subjects in your last year of high school.
Yeah.
So I did history of art and then the subject, which is like history, politics mixed together. And so on top of that, since I was doing like a bilingual curriculum, I also had English literature, history, geography in English, and then this subject called global issues. So it was like very broad. I had like a lot of different subjects, which was actually quite good. But the way that it is taught in France, it's very like you get a lot of content and then you have to learn it and memorize it by heart. And then in the exam, it's about kind of like showing how much knowledge you have and like spilling out everything that you've learned, basically. It's very like dogmatic in that way. You just like sit in your class and you just like take notes, you write down everything, and then you just memorize everything. And so whereas here, like it's much more about like your own argument and like critical thinking and what you think about like this text or like this artwork.
Hello everyone, welcome to Cambridge from the Inside. We're here with a new guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, well, my name is Marianna and I'm a first year history of art student here at Trinity Hall.
Nice. We're doing a really cool podcast today, something that Marianna, that you suggested. We're going to be talking about applying to Cambridge. If you're from outside of the UK, more specifically applying to Cambridge. If you're from France, comparing the two university systems and different cultures and everything you kind of would need to know if you're applying to Cambridge from France, which I think is going to be really cool. So to start off, what made you apply to Cambridge? What was it about Cambridge that made you want to apply?
Yeah, I think beyond being a French student, why would like anyone want to apply to Cambridge? Obviously, it's more about, it's like more than the academics, obviously, because like you're taught by some of the best like academics in the world for your subjects, and so that's like amazing. But it's also about like the sports that you do and like the societies, and it's also about the like social life. So it's this very like all-encompassing like university experience, and I think that's something I really wanted to like experience. And also like this idea of like moving to another city, moving abroad, like getting into this new like environment is something I really like wanted to experience, I guess. And something that I really love about Cambridge, and it's also Oxford, obviously, the collegiate system. I think it's really great because obviously Cambridge is like a top leading university in the world, but at the same time you have the college, which is really this like close-knit community, and you really like get to know everyone, especially here at Trinity Hall. We're about like 110 students in a year, so you really get to know like everyone individually. You eat with people all the time, you go to the library together, you just like live with these people all the time. And so I think that also made the transition from like another country easier, because I just had this like very small community, this small like network of people that I could really like be with, and like it just felt really nice. And there's so many things at Cambridge that are just incredible, like the supervision system. It's quite unique, to be honest, to be able to like talk with a professor or like a PhD student who's like an expert in their subject like weekly. It's quite incredible. So there are many things at Cambridge that I was drawn to.
Nice. And what are like the key differences between the British university system and the French university system, assuming that there are differences?
Yeah, well, in France, if you want to go to just university, like first of all, it's free. So it's much more impersonal in the sense that it's just like big lecture halls with like a lot of students. You never like get to really know the professor. It's very, as I said, like impersonal. And I feel like people treat university more as their like kind of like as their job. Like they go there, they sit there, they don't really like socialize, and they would just go back, work, and their social life is very like different from the like university life. Whereas here it's much more like embedded together. It's like the social life is also the university life in a sense. And yeah, I think especially like with the application process here in the UK, with like your personal statement, obviously it's like personal, and especially at Cambridge, they really care about you as an applicant. With like the interview, they really want to know what you think, you as a student. Whereas in France, you just apply through a platform, which is, it's called Parcoursup, which is the equivalent of like UCAS. And it's really impersonal. You just send in your letter, and then most of the time you wouldn't get an interview or like anything else. You just like be accepted or not, and then you would just like show up. So yeah, it's more impersonal, I think.
Nice, that's really interesting. I hadn't known that about the impersonal side of the French teaching at universities there. So if you're applying from France, applying to Cambridge or through UCAS, what advice would you have, or what hurdles did you have to go through that someone might not realise if they're going through the system as well?
Yeah, well, first of all, with like the timeline and the deadlines, it was much earlier, obviously, because in France, the like platform would only open in like January, and then it would close in April. So it's much later, whereas like the UCAS deadline is in January. So
and the one
and the one for Oxbridge is in October, like the 15th of October, which is so early on during the year. So I remember even having to like think about my university applications the summer before, and already like starting writing my personal statement. So I felt like there was this like a difference between like me and my friends that, for example, would apply like much later on. They didn't really like, weren't really thinking yet about university applications, where I had to like go through all of that much earlier on. And since I also went through the French application system, it was just like a lot, because basically my whole year was just like university applications like all the time. So it was quite intense in that sense.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what were the differences other than the deadlines and when the deadlines were there any differences between the UCAS application and the applications in France?
Yeah, well, for the UCAS application, you write one personal statement and you have 5 university choices. So in that sense, it is easier because you only have one thing to write. And obviously you put a lot of effort and a lot of time in your personal statement. But for French universities, you have to write one like motivational letter for every single university you want to apply to. So it has to be specific to that program, that university. And you can basically apply to like 20 universities. You have to have at least 10. So it is a lot. And then for more like private or like elitist schools, like for example, I applied to Sciences Po, which is quite well known, I guess. It more resembles like a Cambridge application in the sense that you have to like submit written work. You also have to go for an interview. So some schools are a bit more demanding in that sense. But what is quite interesting is that in France, they care much more about your like extracurriculars and sort of everything you do on the side. Like apart from being a good student, it's also about being involved in like your community, your like civic engagements, like what like societies you did at school, what sports you did. They have all of these like on the platform. You have to sort of fill in all of these like different texts about like, okay, I did these sports and I did this and I did that. Whereas the personal statement, it's much more like academia focused. It's about like your course and like what you've read and what you've done, which is really like related to purely academics. Whereas in France, they kind of look at more things. They also look at your grades a lot. And it is quite impersonal because it kind of just goes through like a sort of algorithm or like a system. It can be quite unfair sometimes because they also look like, I guess, what school you came from. And so having like this average from this school can be like better than like from this school. So it is more, I think it's more so like impersonal.
That's interesting. And I imagine, and it was right what you're saying with applications specific to Oxbridge, it's more focused on the supercurricular interest, the academic side of things, and stuff related to why you're curious about the course rather than extracurricular. So it's interesting to hear that in France that's different. And am I right in thinking if you're writing a motivational statement for each French uni that you apply to, that means you can apply to different courses, to different unis in France, whereas because you write one personal statement, it's kind of expected that in the UK you would apply to similar courses to all universities, if not the same course.
Yeah, in the UK, most people just apply for the same course or not
Yeah.
like very similar. Like you would apply, like for example, HSPS at Cambridge, but then like politics and international relations or like something like that at another university.
Yeah.
But in France, if you wanted to, you could literally like apply to medicine and then law and different things. They don't really look at like the other things you're applying to. So yeah, I applied kind of to like a wide range of things. Most of the courses I applied for were more like multidisciplinary. So yeah.
Yeah. What kind of courses?
Yeah, so I applied mostly to Sciences Po, which is like this school in France that it's basically like a mix of political science, history, like economics, sociology, etc. So it's very like multidisciplinary, and it's quite good because you get a year abroad when you go there. So it's quite good, and I had to do like an interview for that as well. And then I also applied for something called a prépa littéraire, which is not very well known. It's not really university. It's like a 2-year course where you prepare for an entrance exam into one of the French grandes écoles, so a very like elitist like school in France. So it's basically 2 years. It's kind of like an extension of high school where you like work a lot in preparation for this entrance exam. And so I applied for the like humanities one, where basically you do everything. You do like philosophy, history, you do languages, you do literature. So it's like very broad. And then I had also kind of like insurance choices. So I just applied for like different universities, like in my hometown in Paris. So yeah.
Nice, that's really interesting. So for French students applying through the UCAS system, what advice do you have on how they should translate their secondary school, their French lycée experience into what they need to put into UCAS?
I think that there aren't that many international students that come to Cambridge anymore. So like it is quite like interesting for them, I think, to see like, oh, you've done like something different and that. And most of the like people who work in the admissions at Cambridge, they like know what you're talking about most of the time. It was just kind of hard for me, like for example, when I was writing my personal statement and I wanted to explain that I took kind of the equivalent of like history of art A level, which is called like a spécialité, which is like a special subject. I was like, how do I even like write that? Do I say special subject? Do I say like spécialité? Like I was just a bit confused about how I was supposed to explain that. And there was also one thing that's part of the application is like the extra questionnaire that you have to do. And I think there's a part where you literally have to include every single topic you have studied in like each subject, like, oh, I've done like these chapters and like blah, blah, blah. And I was just a bit like, oh, what am I supposed to write? Like, do I have to say, I don't know. It was just, in that sense, it was a bit confusing. And I think for my French teachers, it was also a bit confusing because they had to do like predicted grades. And I also had to do like a high school transcript where I had to convert my grades into the like ABC system, whereas like in France, it's always marked out of 20.
Okay.
So that was also something, but yeah.
But you were able to do that?
Yeah, I was able to do that. And I had a English literature teacher who like helped me with like the application process. Oh, nice. So that was quite good. Yeah.
Nice. That's really interesting. And it's like reassuring to hear that it like seemed difficult at first, but it's obviously worked out and you were able to go through those steps. And just to reassure the viewers, in Cambridge, so there's a university-wide admissions team, which is a huge team, but then also in each college there's an admissions team, and they've been processing applications for years and years, and would be very aware of like international qualifications and different qualifications that are not A-levels. So I wouldn't be worried about how to communicate your subjects. I think normally the guidance is to kind of communicate as much as possible, whether that's through the UCAS application or adding extra information on the My Cambridge application. Was there any like differences in teaching style in terms of whether it's in, I guess we've talked a bit about university, comparing French unis and UK universities, but in high school, like with baccalaureate and A levels, were there much differences there?
Yeah, well, the thing that is actually quite good about French high school is that it is quite broad until your very last year. Whereas like in the UK, you choose 3 A levels and then you do that for like your last 2 years. In France, you have like core subjects that are basically compulsory. Everyone has to do them. So like philosophy was compulsory for everyone. Then you had like a bit of science and then different things like sport. And then you had to choose 2 subjects in your last year of high school. So I did history of art and then the subject, which is like history, politics mixed together. And so on top of that, since I was doing like a bilingual curriculum, I also had English literature, history, geography in English, and then this subject called global issues. So it was like very broad. I had like a lot of different subjects, which was actually quite good. But the way that it is taught in France, it's very like you get a lot of content and then you have to learn it and memorize it by heart. And then in the exam, it's about kind of like showing how much knowledge you have and like spilling out everything that you've learned, basically. It's very like dogmatic in that way. You just like sit in your class and you just like take notes, you write down everything, and then you just memorize everything. And so whereas here, like it's much more about like your own argument and like critical thinking and what you think about like this text or like this artwork. And it's just really different because in France, like for example, it's very rigid and very strict. Like when you would write an essay, like a dissertation, it has to have like a 3-part structure. It has to have like 9 subparts. And if you don't follow that like exact structure, they won't even like read your essay. It has to be like really strict. It's very strict. And so, yeah, it's like here it's more about obviously like trying to be like original and more like unique. Whereas in France, you would have like one model of like the perfect essay that all of the like good students are trying to achieve. Whereas here you could have like 20 different versions of like an excellent essay because everyone just has their own kind of take on it. And so, yeah, also something that was different is that I had a lot of contact hours. I had like 40 hours of classes a week. It was a very intense rhythm. My typical day would start at 8 and then finish at 6. And I would usually have classes on a Saturday. So it was a lot. It's also because I took like optional subjects like Latin, but it's just a really intense rhythm because obviously you're in school all day long and then you have homework after that. So it was really intense. And then coming here at Cambridge where I have like 8 contact hours a week, at first I was a bit like, wow, like actually what's happening? Like, and so you really need a lot of discipline to just be like, I need to get through all of this work like by myself. I need to put the discipline on myself because obviously like the expectations are really high, but no one is there to be like, do this, do that. You just have to do it yourself. So yeah, I think it was kind of like a big shift at first. And I was kind of like, I think I was challenged in different ways, but I really enjoy it here, to be honest, like having this like freedom and like, yeah, I just think it's really interesting.
Nice. And so that kind of rigidity and getting students to follow a set essay structure, was that something that was in like high school in France or something that's done at university or both?
I think it's kind of both. Even when you're at university, it's very like exam focused and it's very like content focused as well. So you would just like, for example, if you're studying law, you would just learn like everything by heart, and then just it's very much about learning things by heart, and it's about having the perfect like argument structure and having the perfect like cultural references and having like eloquence and things like that. It's this sort of like set of things that you want to achieve. Whereas here it's much more about like developing your own like set of skills and your own kind of like research, and it's much more personal.
That's because it was interesting to hear, because you were saying your experiences before at school was kind of try to learn as much knowledge as possible, and that's what you'd be assessed on. But I imagine that wasn't what you were assessed on during your interview for history of art. Can you tell us more about what your interview was like and what they were trying to like assess during the interview?
Yeah, well, the interview obviously is much more about like getting to know your thought process and like how you think and how you can kind of like also be kind of destabilized and like trying to make an argument like directly. And so I tried to like prepare a lot for my interview, to be honest, because I was really nervous. And so, yeah, I really tried to kind of know my personal statement inside out, first of all. And I was like watching a lot of like documentaries on YouTube. I just wanted to be more like knowledgeable, I guess, like in my subject. And an important part of the history of art interview is like visual analysis. So they'll give you like an artwork, or they'll give you like a pair of like paintings, and you have to like compare and contrast. So I also like I bought some books, and I was trying to like learn also the like technical like specific vocabulary to history of art like in English, because obviously I'd only like studied it in French, and I was like, okay, need to know like all of this. And something that I was quite, I don't know if I was like shocked, but something that was really like pleasantly surprising is how like nice they were in the interview. They were really like kind, and they were really like really interested in what I was going to say, and it just felt really nice. To be honest, it was like quite destabilizing, but yeah, I think overall they were just they were really nice. They asked me most of all questions about my personal statement. And then so there was also like the visual analysis part of it.
Nice. So for like people who are watching, who are like preparing for their interview in like any humanities subjects, including history of art, like in that, when they're asking you to compare two pieces of visual art, is there like a right answer that they're expecting from you, or what are they wanting from the student?
Well, first of all, for history of art, they don't expect you to have done history of art before. So it's kind of like what you can make of it. So I'd say just trying to like describe the artwork and talk about the like visual components. So you would talk about like composition, perspective, brushwork, everything that you can kind of like notice, and then go more into like interpretation. If there are any like symbols that you can identify, or more go into more like iconography. But sometimes you just won't know anything about an artwork, and so it's kind of just trying to say as much as you can, and sometimes they will like try to push you further and be like, oh, and this, like, what do you think of this little detail in the painting? And they really like try to accompany you and try to like push that reflection further. Sometimes they would ask kind of like unexpected questions. Like I remember they asked me like, could you date this artwork? I was kind of like taken aback, but it was quite interesting, and especially when it was like a pair of artwork and they wanted you to compare. Sometimes it would be like in a different style, or it would be like the same subject matter but like not the same like time frame, so you had to like talk about that.
So would I be right in thinking if they're taking into account that they don't expect anyone to have studied history of art, they're not expecting people to come in with a lot of knowledge, but they're wanting to see how they think and approach the work and the questions?
Yeah, it's definitely about that, and it's also, I think, other things you can identify that you've seen like maybe in a history class, or like more like a philosophical concept, or it's just kind of other things of like your general knowledge that you can kind of link back to the artwork. And it's also about the like visual and what you can see and how you can like express what you're seeing in front of an artwork. So yeah.
Nice. And so say for applicants who are choosing between going to uni in France or going to uni in the UK, or at least Cambridge, if they wanted to kind of have a learning experience that was more like what we've been describing in the interview, would you recommend Cambridge as an option?
Yeah, definitely. I think, first of all, if you are British, or if you have like financially like that opportunity to go study in the UK, I think definitely go for it and definitely do the application, because it's just, I think coming from like a French background, and so having like that experience, coming to Cambridge and having this new like academic experience, I think it's so enriching, and it's really wonderful, to be honest. And also to be like really specialized in your subject, it's quite incredible. So yeah, I would definitely like recommend going through it.
I mean, in a perfect world, if you're able to both learn a lot of knowledge but also be able to think creatively, then it's like a perfect mixture. Really easier said than done.
Yeah.
So I was just quite curious because there's a lot of international students applying to Cambridge, and they'll be like, when they're studying Cambridge, English would be not their mother tongue; it would be their second language. Was that the case for you, and did your school teach in English as well as French?
Yeah, so I was in kind of like a bilingual curriculum. It's this program which is not very well known. I mean, neither in England nor in France, to be honest. It's called the BFI, which is the Baccalauréat Français International. So it's basically translate to the international option of the French baccalaureate, which meant that basically I was just doing like a regular French baccalaureate, like any French student. And then on top of that, I had extra subjects in English, so like English literature, history, geography, etc. Sorry, could you just reply the question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting.
So was I taught in English? So basically it was like half and half. Half was in French, half was in English. So I was already used to like writing essays in English for like English literature and like history and things like that. Obviously it's not like the same level as like a Cambridge essay, but I was already kind of used to that. But it is quite different coming here and then having to only speak in English and only learn in English. It is quite different. And I think I've only been here a month, but like for the first few weeks, I guess, sometimes I would just like translate things because sometimes it just sounded better in French in my head.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see how it would like sound in English. But yeah, I think both French and English are my mother tongues. So it wasn't like particularly like difficult when I arrived here. But I think also like trying to like socialize and like make friends here, I think there's like a whole part of my personality which is kind of like my French personality that I can't really like be here. I don't know. It's a bit strange because obviously like I feel like you have different personalities and like different languages that you have. And so although I made like really great friends, you know, like sometimes just like making jokes or having like those different like references, it is like kind of different, I think.
Yeah, so you're always like bilingual. That's from like very early on.
Yeah, I was actually really lucky with that. So my mum is British and my dad is Polish.
Okay.
But they've always lived in France and I grew up in France.
So can you speak Polish as well?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's actually like I'm really, really grateful for that, like being trilingual since I was a child. It's really amazing, like learning different languages as a child.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool because then I would like speak English at home most of the time. Then I would speak Polish with my dad, although my Polish is not as good. Yeah. And then I would always sort of, my friends at school would just like, I would just speak French with them. So that was actually really good. And the school I was in was like an international high school. And so there was a British section, but there was also a German, Polish, there was Russian, Spanish, Italian. So it was really great. It was really international. And so I think that was really nice.
Nice. Like, so I think this is something that like someone like myself who was never really properly bilingual at all, struggled to understand being able to think in different languages. Like, does being able to think in different languages help with like the studies and like and doing the humanities work and thinking critically? Because I've heard people say there's an overlap between the two. Is that like the case, would you say?
Yeah, I think it does, because it helps you kind of like shift from one thing to another like more easily. And I really like when I'm sort of like researching something for an essay, and then I would find like a French author or like a French like source, and I'm like, oh, that's great. I'll look into that, and so I can like read it in French, and so that'll be like really nice. And yeah, it kind of like teaches you to always be, I don't know, like alert and trying to like shift from one thing to another. Sometimes it can be quite difficult because you'd have like this great idea in like one language, but you can't really like translate it into the other language. And so yeah, sometimes it is a bit tricky, but I think overall it's really good.
So when you say shift from one thing to another, can you expand on that a little bit? What do you mean by that?
Just like sometimes there are different like concepts in like another language, and then you're trying to like, oh, but how can I like, explain this in this other language? And it kind of helps you, like, even when you're reading in French or you're reading in English, you really have to like change sort of like frames of mind to like read in these different languages, I guess.
Yeah.
And so it's really about having this like other like set of thought, I think. I don't know if that makes much sense.
Set of?
Like I don't know, like when I'm reading in French, I feel like it's much more, I feel more like rigid and like, okay, so da da da. And then in English, it's much more about like, oh, then what are like my thoughts on that? And like, oh, no, it's more like free, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, wow, that sounds really interesting. So what made you, when you were applying to Cambridge, choose history of art?
Yeah, well, I think I was always someone who was like interested in the humanities in general. I always loved literature, history, philosophy, languages. I was kind of like interested in everything, and I was considering different courses. I was considering history and German for a while.
Okay.
And then I just started kind of like thinking about my personal statement and what I wanted to like talk about, different experiences and things like that. And I just realized I had more to say about history of art because it had always been kind of my more like personal preference, like my more like niche interest. And then I had done like quite a few things. So for example, I had like a mini like curating experience. Like in my school, we had organized a photography exhibition in like the hallways of my school, which I really enjoyed. And then I also did this kind of like summer course at the École du Louvre in Paris, which is like one of like the best schools for history of art. And they had these like summer like weekly courses, and I was really interested in doing that. So that's also something I could talk about in my personal statement. And I just realized that it was something that really interested me. And when I also looked about the like course details, even though it's really based obviously on like visual culture and like material culture and like the objects themselves, it's always linked to those broader like political, historical, like philosophical, even like anthropological questions. And so yeah, that's what I find really interesting. And like having started the course here, I don't find it too like specific at all. It's really broad because like how it works during first year, it's like chronological. So we would do one a week, like antiquity, then go to the Middle Ages. And it's, you just learn about so many different things because obviously when you're looking at like classical Greek sculpture, you have to learn about the whole like history of ancient Greece. So it's really broad and it's really interesting. And especially here at Cambridge, the cohort is so small. There are only 35 of us in a year.
Oh, wow.
Which is like, it's really great because you just like get to know everyone and it really feels like kind of like a class. And I really like that. And there's so much art available here in Cambridge. There's obviously like the Fitzwilliam Museum, which has an incredible collection. There's Kettle's Yard, and there's just so much like beautiful architecture everywhere. So like, yeah, studying history of art at Cambridge, you're really lucky of being in this like really amazing environment where everything is like really available to you. And obviously London is not that far away, so if you just want to like do a day trip, go visit some museums there, it's totally possible.
Nice. So because what you were saying about the course reminds me of because we did a history of art podcast last year with Eugene, who was also French. I think when people think of history of art or art history, it sounds very niche in that it's specifically about art and specifically the history of art. But from what you're saying, it sounds like the course is actually really broad and provides a lot of scope. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, definitely. So basically we have 3 papers in the first year. We have the making of art, the objects of art history, which is like an object-led class. So like typically we have classes like in a museum, and we have the meaning of art. And so it's really interesting because like for the making of art part, you really look at like the materiality, the like technicality, and that's like also really interesting because I had never really like studied that before. And then in the meaning, you just like go through like so many like different things, and it's it's really interesting because obviously it touches like so many different broader questions. And I just think studying history through the lens of art is just such an interesting way of like looking back at history and looking back at the past. And the way it's taught here is really interesting. Like, for instance, when we had our week on antiquity, we were taught by some professors from the classics faculty. So that was also, that was really great. Yeah.
Oh, nice. That does sound really cool to kind of look into how things are created and then interpreting them. It's kind of, I guess it's for someone who's not in the know, they might think of that the degrees history of art means specifically art pieces, but from what you're saying, it sounds like it's more of an like it can be like an abstract idea of art as well as specific pieces. Am I right? Is that right?
Yeah, it's definitely the case. Like, you look at also so many like different mediums. Like, you look at sculpture, you look at paintings, you look at different like objects like pottery, and then also like manuscripts and like cathedrals, because like we're doing the Middle Ages at the moment. So it's so broad. You're not just going to like go into your lecture and like talk about a painting and then like that's not what it's like. It's much broader than that, and it's really interesting. And each lecture is like really specific as well. And so it really goes into like the depth of the matter and like the subject. So it's also really interesting. And you're mostly like taught by professors or academics who are like specialists in that like time frame. So it's also interesting.
And you've been here for a term, right? Yeah, it's your first term.
Yeah.
And how have you found it? Like being like first time, Cambridge, the course?
I think at first when I arrived, I was a bit like lost, especially in the course, because we didn't get that much information. We didn't get that many like guidelines. And like before starting lectures, we had a first essay due, and it was, you had to pick a building in Cambridge and write a 2,000 word essay about it, talk about its like cultural, historical context. And I was just a bit like, what am I supposed to do? Like, how am I going to find a building? What am I supposed to like write about? I was just like so lost, I think. And I feel like I was just like writing it and not really like knowing what I was doing. But then as sort of the weeks went on, I mean, I've only been here a month, but just also having like your supervisions, it feels much more like structured, and it's much clearer now. I feel like I know what I'm doing. And you also get like really good feedback on your essays. And honestly, like writing an essay a week is really amazing. It's so good. You just like train so much because you're just like writing all the time. And just having been here a month, I think my writing skills have really evolved like so much.
Nice.
So I think that's really good, even though at first it was a bit daunting. And also having so few contact hours, I really had to like organize myself really well and really like plan in advance. Like for an essay, it'd be like, okay, I need to do like 3 days of reading, and I need to do like 2 days of writing, and I need to set like these time slots where I'm like in the library and doing this and that. And it's really about having your own like discipline and being organized.
So imagine like an antithesis to the impersonal teaching style you might find elsewhere. The supervisions are quite like a personalized way of teaching, and an opportunity to be able to ask any questions that you might have, like with what you were saying. Yeah,
it's really good because how my supervisions work is that I like submit an essay, let's say at 12 p.m. on a Thursday, and then I have my supervision on a Friday. So my supervisor would have a look for my essay, like give me some feedback. They're not marked, but basically, they give you like feedback. And so then we would discuss it in the supervision. So you would like kind of explain your argument. You would like kind of go through your essay, say, okay, I've looked at this and I've used these examples and so forth. And then the supervisor would like ask more questions to go like more in depth, like on the subject matter. And that's really interesting because like it resembles the interview kind of, where they sort of ask you to like go further. And it's really interesting because I feel like in the French system, a professor would never ask me like, oh, what do you think about this? They would like never ask you that because they don't really care about your opinion. It's like you're reading this text like in philosophy. They would never be like, oh, and like, what do you think about Kant? Or what do you think about this? It's just like, it never happened. So like being here and they're like, they really want to know what you think and like, what's your own opinion. It's it's really different, and you really have to like formulate your own ideas on like what you're studying, and it can feel a bit daunting at first because it's like, wow, well, I have to like challenge this like this author or like this thing that has been established in the history of art for like years and years, and like, what do you mean I have to like criticize it? But then it's really interesting, and I feel like you're also much more encouraged to challenge your supervisor and be like, oh, but actually I think that maybe that's true, or like it's much more about like a discussion, whereas in France there's much more this system of like authority between like teacher and student. You would never like want to challenge your teacher. You would always be like very careful or cautious when you're asking a question. Whereas here it's much more encouraged, and it's even like, it's really encouraged to kind of have like a different opinion and to like challenge them.
That's really cool. It reminds me of the film Dead Poet Society. It's really good film on encouraging young people to think for themselves as they learn what's been said before. So the last two questions we have is for French students who are watching this and thinking about applying to Cambridge. Were there any culture shocks that you experienced once you started living in the UK?
Definitely. I mean, I've been to the UK quite a bit before because I have family that lives here. I think it was mostly culture shocks that are specific to Cambridge, and I think that like anyone would like experience like how formal it is here. It's just it's quite it's a bit insane, like having these like formal dinners, wearing a gown, like grace said in Latin. It's quite like all of these like old traditions that are preserved. You get quite used to it, but then when you like describe it to someone that's not here, they're like, oh really, like that's a bit odd. So it's really like a bubble here. And I think something that kind of like shocked me as well is how informal you can be with your professors and like your supervisors. You can just email them and like by their first name, and it's really like chill. Whereas in France, like there's this really like this level of formality. You have to be very like formal. So it's really nice. Like you can just go and like chat with your professor after your lecture, and you have this very like informal like intellectualism where like people would just, I don't know, discuss philosophy like in a pub, or it's more like your academics are like embedded into your life, and there's this very like romantic rhythm of life of like, oh, just like going on a cycle by the River Cam and then going to the library and like doing this, and it's very, I don't know, it's just the workload is obviously really intense, but you have this like very rhythmic sort of cycle. I think those were my culture shocks. But then, like, for example, like socializing and like talking to people, I thought that I would be more like not left out, but I wouldn't like really like understand like their references or like different like, cultural references. But it's not that like deep, to be honest. Like I haven't really experienced that much like differences. Like it's not, if you are an international student and you're like, oh, but what if I don't like fit into like British culture, if I don't like, I don't know, if, like make friends with other people, like honestly, like don't worry about it, because everyone is like really nice. And even when I say I'm from France, they're like really interested and they're really curious, and they're like, oh, but that's so interesting, and like, oh, so what did you do? And I don't know, it's really great.
Nice. That sounds really cool. I definitely think the academic scholarly lifestyle is like in its own right a very good reason to apply to Cambridge, to experience all the things that you've just said. And just last question, just for anyone who like you've said, like yourself, you've said worried about not embracing their French side of their personality, or wanting to meet other French students. Is there a French society at Cambridge, and like do they run events, etc.?
Yeah, so there's the Cambridge University French SOC. I wasn't really involved at first because I wasn't on the WhatsApp group at the beginning, but they organised different social events. Last week there was like a pub night, and they do like formal dinners. They would do like a, I don't know, wine and cheese night. So they organise different things, which is quite nice to like connect with other people. I must say, when I went, it's mostly either like French students who are here like on an exchange year, or people who are like distantly French or like are studying MML, for example. So they're all
right.
it is I have found it quite hard meeting other international students, to be honest. I've met like a few Italian students. I know like some Swiss students, but it is a bit hard like finding other internationals. But you have like these societies, and obviously like that's really good to like meet other people. So definitely join them.
And I imagine because this would be the case in each college, including Trinity Hall, having the dining hall and having like free meals available throughout the day gives like a really good social opportunity to meet other people in your year, like not just in your subjects, but any subjects, as well as students from other years as well.
Yeah, it's really great because all of the first years, at least most of them, are on central sites. So we all basically live together.
Yeah.
And since we don't have really like kitchens, like we can't really like cook for ourselves. So most people would just eat in hall, like lunch and dinner, which is really this like really nice moment of the day where everyone like meets up, you like can catch up with your friends. So it's like really nice having that. And I just found it a bit like weird at first because obviously in like during like the induction week, etc., you're like with people all the time, like all day long, because you have these like induction talks, etc. And then like when everyone just started their course and like going to lectures, I was just like, where is everyone going? Like I just felt a bit like everyone was just kind of doing their own life. But it's really nice to have these like moments where you reunite. And I think most of my friends do humanities. So yeah, we kind of have the same like rhythm, as in like we will be in the library most of the time, like working on essays. So we can also like kind of help each other with that. So that's actually really good.
Nice. That sounds really good. Yeah, and it sounds really cool how you're able to kind of like have your own routine and independent life and do your own thing, but also have these opportunities to reunite, as you said, with everyone else. Just a kind of good support system. Thanks so much, Marianna, for such a really interesting podcast. I think it'd be really useful for international applicants as a whole, but especially students applying from France. If you're watching the podcast and you have any other ideas of what you would like us to see, do let us know any topics that you want us to go over. We're hoping to do more podcasts on interviews advice and other parts of the admissions process that we haven't gone through already, as well as other subjects. Also getting alumni on the podcast. So have a look out for that, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Nice. Oh, how was that?
Good. It was really good.
Yeah, it was a really, really good suggestion.